The hairline crack in my mug looked like a stitch about to pull free. I set it on the counter and kept my hands under the warm tap. The kitchen window framed a square of Santa Fe sky, hard blue, the kind that makes the adobe glow. The smell of green chiles drifted in from a neighbor's grill. Behind me, Kendra's voice floated down the hallway. "Donna, bring everything. Your room is all set. Nora will be fine on the couch. She is very accommodating." I did not turn. I adjusted the water and rinsed a plate until it squeaked. The plate was white and heavy old restaurant china I had bought at a yard sale when Evan was in middle school. I stacked it with its brothers and let the stack settle with a dull clink. Kendra walked into the kitchen with her phone still in her hand. The screen flashed as she ended the call. She smiled bright and quick. "Good news. My parents are coming for a few days. They will be more comfortable in your room." My room. In my house. The faucet hissed. I shut it off and dried my hands on a dish towel that had my initials embroidered at the corner. The thread had faded to the color of dried roses. "When do they arrive?" I said. Today, late afternoon." Kendra's smile held. "You are always so understanding." There was a moment where the room felt taller. Light fell through dust like pale confetti, and I heard the refrigerator click. The refrigerator was new. The old one with the dent from Evan's skateboard had gone out in July. Kendra had picked the stainless steel model. She had said it looked cleaner. "You offered my room," I said. Kendra set her phone face down. I told them yes, they are older. The couch would not be fair. I could feel the towel slip in my fingers. It slid out of my hand and fell to the tile. I watched the edge of it ripple and go still. Evan stepped in from the hall in socks and a soft t-shirt. His hair was damp. He lifted his eyes from his screen. "Mom, it is just a few days. You can use the couch. I will bring in the good pillows." "Evan," I said, "is my say also for a few days?" He blinked. He glanced at Kendra. He gave me a careful smile. "Mom, please, this is easier." "Sit," I said. They both looked surprised. The kitchen chairs were painted turquoise, chipped in places where hands always grabbed. Evan sat. Kendra sat across from him, straight-backed, her hands folded at the edge of the table as if she were at a meeting. I poured coffee into my cracked mug and added a pinch of cinnamon. The scent rose warm and sweet and filled the space above the table. I did not drink. I set the mug down, and the hairline crack seemed to lengthen by the width of a breath. "You told your mother I am accommodating," I said. It was a compliment, Kendra said, cheerful again. "You are easy. You do not make trouble." Easy and voiceless are not the same thing. I slid the mug aside. "This is my bedroom. It has my things. It is where I sleep, where I pray, where I keep the quilt I made the winter Evan had the flu and needed me every hour. I will not give it up." Kendra's smile thinned. "Nora, if you do not like it, bear with it. It is temporary." "No." The word landed without weight. It did not need it. It filled the little room and sat in the chair with us. Evan rubbed the line between his eyes with his thumb. "We are talking about logistics," he said. "Nothing personal." "It is personal when you move a person in her own house," I said. "It is personal when you decide what happens to her body while she sleeps." Kendra tapped a fingernail on the table. "I informed you yesterday." "You informed me. You did not consult me. There is a difference." "I'm not sure why you're making this intense," she said. "My parents have nowhere else. They drove a long way. This is something a family does." I watched a thread of light along the counter edge. My palms felt dry. I opened the drawer by the stove and took out the ring of keys. There were 5 fat with years. I spun one key with a slow finger. It was the one with a little nick on the top, where I had dropped it in the driveway. "Guests sleep in the living room," I said. "That is what happens in this house. You can put the air mattress under the window. There is an extra blanket in the hall closet." "Nora," Kendra said, the tone slipping. "Please do not embarrass me." "Do not volunteer what is not yours," I said. "Mom," Evan began. "You brought your wife into this house when you needed a place," I said. "I gave you half the closets. I turned my sewing room into a nursery for June. Last spring, we changed the kitchen, and I lost the shelf where I kept my herbs. I agreed to those things. This I do not agree to." Kendra leaned forward. "They are my parents. Where would you have them sleep? A hotel, really." "If that is what your budget and comfort allow," I said. "That is rude," she said. "Rude is telling me what will happen to me after the decision is made," I said. Rude is using the word accommodating to lower my voice. Evan lifted his hands. Can we not fight? I will set up the living room. We are not fighting, I said. We are setting a boundary. Kendra laughed once. That is a strong word for a mattress. It is the right word for a door, I said. Silence settled thick as flour. Outside, a dog barked twice and stopped. A roadrunner flicked past the window like a quick thought. I could feel my heart beating. It was steady. I picked up my mug and drank. The coffee had cooled a little. The cinnamon still warmed the back of my throat. Kendra found her smile again and fixed it on like a brooch. If your room is sacred, then we will adjust. They can take the couch. Fine. That is not what you said into your phone, I said. She stood. I have to get flowers and towels. They will be here in hours. Will you at least make the house nice? This house is nice, I said. Avon pushed his chair back and stood. Thank you, he said to no one or to all of us. It will be fine. Bring the air mattress up from the garage, I said. The pump is in the toolbox. He moved toward the door with relief on his shoulders. Kendra followed him, but she paused with her hand on the frame and looked back at me. You are being a little selfish, she said, almost gentle. I know you do not mean to be. I held her gaze. Being an adult who owns a door is not selfish. Her mouth opened. She closed it. She left the kitchen without another word. I stood for a while and listened to the house breathe. Houses do that. They tick and sigh and settle into their foundations. I finished my coffee and washed the mug, careful with the crack. I dried it and set it upside down, then walked the hall to my room. The door was white. The paint had a faint gloss that caught the light as a soft sheen. The brass plate on the knob was warm from the last time my hand had held it. Inside, the air had a quiet smell, cedar from the closet, a trace of rose from the sachet my mother made when she could still thread a needle without squinting. The quilt on the bed was the pattern called Road to California. I had stitched it while winter wind pressed against the adobe, and Evan slept on the couch with a fever, and we watched old movies between thermometers. I touched the quilt, the little peaks and seams. I felt where my thumb had pricked 20 years ago, and a drop of blood had dried in the batting. It was a memory inside a memory. I looked at the nightstand. My mother looked back at me from a black and white frame. Her hair was glossy and thick. She was 20 in that picture, engaged and stubborn. I am keeping it, I said to the room. The room agreed without sound. On the dresser, a small key lay on a tray. I added it to the ring in my pocket and weighed the metal in my palm. The keys felt heavy. They also felt right. I turned the bedroom lock and pulled the door to. The latch met the strike plate with a clean click. In the hallway, the air was different, cooler. I moved to the living room and opened the hall closet. I took out the extra blanket, the one with stripes the color of canyon rock. I folded it in a square on the back of the couch. I found the sheets. I stacked them so the edge lined with the shelf. Order in small things helps the larger ones hold. I heard the garage door roll up. Evan wrestled the PVC tube of the air mattress through the door arms full. Kendra came behind him with a bag of grocery store bouquets, cellophane crackling her face set. I did not offer to arrange the flowers. She took the big blue vase and did it herself, snipping stems with the kitchen scissors. Petals fell and stuck to the wet counter. We did not talk. The pump buzzed, and the air mattress rose and smoothed into a soft block. Evan pressed it with his hand and nodded. He found a sheet and spread it and tucked the corners like he remembered from Boy Scouts. He smiled at that memory. Then he sighed and rubbed his neck. June's crayons rattled in a tin in her room at the end of the hall. She would draw after school and leave the paper on my pillow. Her drawings were full of doors. She liked to add tiny keys in the corners like secret treasure. Kendra placed the vase where the air mattress would barely fit. She adjusted it and moved it an inch. She turned to me. I told them you are happy to have visitors, she said. Do not put words in my mouth, I said. Her chin lifted. A flush rose at her collarbones. She opened her mouth. The doorbell rang. The sound cut clean through the room. Kendra flinched. Evan spun toward the foyer. I stood there with my hand in my pocket, my fingers on the ring of keys, and listened as the bell rang again. Evan reached the door first. The bell chimed again, a bright ping that felt too cheerful for the room it entered. He opened it to Donna and Ray, both clutching carry-ons, both wearing the polite faces people wear in unfamiliar houses. Donna smelled like powder and citrus. Ray lifted his free hand. "Hi there," he said, eyes warm, unsure where to look. Kendra slid past Evan with the bouquet and a practiced welcome. Come in, come in. We set you up right by the window. You will love the light." Nora stayed where she was long enough to hear the click of the door close behind them. She let the keys settle into her pocket, the ring heavy against the fabric. Then she moved into the hallway, turned toward her bedroom, and felt the air shift cooler as she passed the threshold. "Hello, Nora," Donna said, stepping forward with a small gift bag held out. "We brought you pecans, the good kind, from a farm, not a store." "Thank you," Nora said. "Welcome." Kendra inserted herself as if to catch anything that might drop. "They are a little tired. The drive from Lubbock was longer than they remembered. We will get them comfortable." "Living room is ready," Nora said. Kendra's smile paused. It was such a slight pause that a stranger might have missed it. Donna did not miss it. She looked from Kendra to the couch with the folded blanket to the white door down the hall that was closed. She colored faintly. "Oh, we do not want to trouble you," Donna said. "Wherever you prefer. We can make do." "You will be fine here," Nora said. "There is a good outlet for the lamp. The mattress holds air if you do not bounce on it." Ray chuckled once. "I will behave." Kendra set the vase on the coffee table and adjusted the stems until 3 yellow daisies fanned toward the window. She touched the couch, the blanket, as if confirming that the shape of the room would hold. Even carried the small suitcases in and put them near the wall. He looked grateful for the concrete task. He always had. "Let me get the pillows," he said, and fled back down the hall. Donna stood by the window with her hands folded over the strap of her purse. "Your home is beautiful," she said. "I love the color. It makes me think of warm bread." "Thank you," Nora said. It was the only paint that did not fade under this sun. They settled their guests the way people settle people when the ground is uneven. Kendra narrated the kitchen as if for a tour drawers with utensils, where to find the coffee, how to operate the tap so it did not sputter. Donna listened with careful nods and softened eyes, her way of being gracious when something small had gone wrong. Dinner was thick with the clink of utensils in place of talk. Evan told a short story about a server outage that nobody understood. Ray smiled and asked one question that made Evan light up. Kendra asked if tea would be better than coffee for the night. Nora watched a tiny petal cling to the side of the vase and then slide down in a slow curve. The air mattress huffed and settled whenever someone shifted in their chair. When it was time for sleep, Donna smoothed her skirt and patted Nora's hand. "Thank you for having us," she said. "It is all right," Nora said. "Sleep well." She left her bedroom door closed. The lock sat easy in its slot. In the dark, she could hear small sounds, soft voice, a sniff from Kendra that may have been a held breath or a held complaint. Evan's murmur, hopeful and tired. The house made its own sounds. Wood giving back the heat it had collected all day. The refrigerator compressor lifting. The air mattress sighing as it took one more adjustment and then gave up to rest. In the morning, Nora found Donna and Ray in the kitchen, testing the new coffee machine, as if it were a puzzle that could be solved with kindness. Ray held the carafe like it might leak. Donna smiled at a bag of sugar like an old friend she had not seen in years. "Good morning," Nora said. "Want a proper cup?" "We would love one," Donna said. "We did not want a snoop." "It is hard to use," Ray said. "A lot of buttons." Nora measured grounds by feel and added the pinch of cinnamon she had always added. The smell rose like a small memory. She slid a mug across to Ray and one to Donna. They took them with gratitude that had weight. "We hope we are not causing any trouble," Ray said. "You are not," Nora said. "We had a lack of talking, that is all." "You know how it is," Donna said. "Kendra likes to plan. She means well. She always has." "I know what she likes," Nora said. "I will not be moved." Donna looked over Nora's shoulder at the white door down the hall. She nodded once, a slow motion of understanding. Kendra walked in, dressed like she was already on her way to a store. Perfume moved ahead of her. She looked fresh, like someone who chooses it. "Mom, Dad, we will go get you some better towels," she said, then shifted her gaze to Nora. "May I speak to you in private?" Nora led her to the bedroom, then did not open the door. She turned in the hall, spine straight keys cool in her pocket, and barred the way with a look. "What do I tell them?" Kendra said, the brightness peeled back. "That you refused, that you made me look unprepared." "Tell them the truth," Nora said. "Tell them you gave away a room that is not yours." They drove a long way. They can sleep in the room they have. Nora studied Kendra's face, the twitch near her mouth. You told someone I'm accommodating. You used that word to move me around. Stop. Kendra stared like a person who meets an edge she forgot existed. You are being a little selfish. No, Nora said. I am being the person who has a key. They stood long enough for Kendra's chin to stiffen. She turned and walked back to the kitchen with her smile pinned back on like a badge. The day moved through chores. Evan fixed the window that had stuck since winter. Ray tried to help and told a story about a broken hinge from 1984. Donna washed the breakfast plates and would not accept a chair. Nora swept the patio slowly and watched a pair of finches quarrel over the feeder. She felt the old rhythm return to her hands and feet, the tempo of work she belongs to. By midday, Kendra was in the living room with her phone at her ear. Nora did not try to listen. The house made eavesdropping too easy. The voices carried along the hall and found anyone with their guard down. No, she is over it, Kendra said with a light tone she saved for friends. It was a little tantrum. Older women get funny, I will just book a hotel next time, not worth the fuss. Silence on the other end. Kendra laughed softly. Yes, patience, like with kids. Nora stopped with the broom bristles pressed to the floor. Her chest felt tight and open at the same time, like a window that sticks and then jolts free. She did not walk into the living room. She kept the broom still until her hand steadied. Then she finished sweeping and emptied the dustpan into the bin. She left the house for the market without telling anyone. The air outside was bright and thin. The distance to the corner store felt short. She moved past the fence she had built with Evan that first summer, the one that had leaned until she found the right steaks. At the market, she chose salmon instead of chicken tomatoes, with tops that still smelled like vine, a bunch of radishes, for the way they looked in a white bowl. She bought a small bouquet of wild chrysanthemums. She bought cinnamon even though there was some at home. She bought it for the act. At the coffee cart by the door, she ordered 1 cup and sat at the metal table that warmed in the sun. She put her hands around the heat. A child at the next table talked about a drawing that had a secret door. The child said the door was small and only for people who knew where to look. When she came back, Evan met her in the hall like someone who had been counting minutes. We thought you were still in the yard, he said, relief and rebuke wrapped together. I was out, Nora said. I can help with dinner, he said, eager for a piece that could be cooked. You can set the table, Nora said. Put the quilted placemats out, the ones with the red squares. The day bent into evening. June came home from kindergarten with her backpack dragging and left crayons all over her desk like bright bones. She hung her drawing on the fridge. There was a house, 3 doors, a sun, and a key in the corner. She wrote Grandma in large letters that slid downhill. At dinner, the food was simple. The room was not. Kendra waited until plates were down and forks moved. She cleared her throat. I told Tasha we could do barbecue on Sunday, she said, bright again. I will ask her to bring the ribs. Is that fine? Nora put her fork down. Did you invite her already? I told her probably. I said I would ask you. You invited her, Nora said. Then you came to me. It is just family, Kendra said. I'm trying to do what you want, I asked. You informed, Nora said. You did not consult. Donna looked at her plate. Ray folded his napkin into a neat square that fell open again. Evan rubbed the back of his neck. Mom, he said, it is a casual lunch. This is not about ribs, Nora said. It is about the door. June looked from one face to another, her spoon hovering midway to her mouth. Why are we talking loud? She asked. We are practicing decisions, Nora said. We are practicing who gets to make them. Kendra's smile cracked like thin ice under a boot. Your grandmother is being a little difficult, she said to June, soft as if it were a kindness. The words hung in the air with a taste like metal. Nora stood and took her plate to the sink, though it was not empty. The water ran. The faucet hissed. She dried her hands, set the dish aside, and walked down the hall. She did not slam her door. She closed it with care. The lock took the key in a familiar turn. She felt the latch catch. Her room held its quiet. She sat on the edge of the bed and put both feet flat on the braided rug. She let her eyes move over what was hers. The frame with her mother. The rosary folded in a small bowl. The quilt with the tiny memory of blood in the batting that no one else would ever see. She opened the top drawer of the nightstand and slid her fingers under the stack of folded handkerchiefs until she felt paper. She took out a small envelope yellowing at the edges and a ticket that had been tucked there since the last time she visited Ruth alone. The print had faded, but the city name was clear. Seattle. She held it and felt the texture of worn cardstock against her palm. The keys in her pocket pressed into her thigh. The room listened. The house held its breath. The bell at the front door stayed silent. Outside, a late light moved along the floorboards like water. Morning came with a thin band of light under the blinds. The house was still and careful. I sat at the kitchen table with a sheet of cream paper and a pen that left a clean blue line. The first words were slow, then they found their order. I wrote that I was safe. I wrote that I needed distance to think. I wrote that the key in my pocket meant something and that I would not be moved without my own hand on the door. I folded the paper once. I slid it into an envelope and pressed the gum with the flat of my thumb. I set it in the center of the table, where their eyes would land even if they looked away. The pecans Donna had brought sat to the side tied with a ribbon. A petal from the bouquet had dried to a paper curl. The keys in my pocket felt heavier than they had the day before. I walked down the hall and paused by my bedroom. I touched the door with the back of my fingers. Cool paint. A faint ridge where the brush had overlapped. I was not taking anything that could not fit in a small case. 2 shirts, a sweater, the rosary. The picture of my mother stayed. The quilt stayed. The room could keep what it kept for me. The front door clicked behind me. The air outside was bright and dry and smelled like dust warmed by sun. I locked the door and stood for a count of 3 before I put the keys back into my pocket. A taxi idled at the end of the street. The driver turned the radio down when I slid into the back seat. "Bus station," I said. We passed the corner store with the coffee cart. We passed the fence that had leaned before I learned to set a truer post. The driver kept his eyes on the road and the needle of the speedometer. I watched the adobe walls unroll, and then the downtown rise up with its low buildings and signs that had faded edges. The terminal smelled like hot pretzels and old mop. Voices overlapped like cards shuffled into each other. I stood in line behind a woman with a red backpack and a man who held a baby who kept wriggling to see everything at once. When it was my turn, I asked for Seattle, and the clerk said the time and the gate and slid the ticket under the pane like a magician with a small trick. I sat on a molded plastic chair that had a small split in the seat. The sun through the tall windows made squares of light on the floor. The squares were clean and warm. A boy dragged a suitcase that knocked into his shins and did not make him cry. Over the loudspeaker, a voice announced a delay for El Paso. No one yelled. A woman took a knit hat off her head and shook her hair free. I bought a water and a bag of almonds because I did not know when I would feel like food. I watched the clock hands climb. I kept my phone in my purse. It buzzed and stilled and buzzed. Evan's name filled the small screen when I finally looked. I put the phone back and felt the hum of it against the leather like a heartbeat that was not mine. On the bus, the seats were a blue that had once been brighter. The air vents clicked into place with a small plastic sound. A man 2 rows ahead slept with his mouth open and a newspaper on his chest. A student read a book with tiny print and underlined every 3rd line. The world outside grew flat, and then rose and then opened. Long stretches of road pulled under the wheels. I counted the cattle guards and the bridges and the yellow grass. At a stop north of Albuquerque, I took the phone out again and pressed Evan's name. He picked up on the first sound. "Mom, where are you? Are you all right?" "I am fine," I said. I left a note. "You did? Why did you not just wake me?" "Because you would have tried to make me stay." "I would have asked you to talk." "We are talking," I said. The bus hummed. The aisle smelled like coffee and crackers. "Evan, I am not bothered. I am tired. I am going to Ruth's for a while." He went quiet. He had not thought of Ruth. He could hear rain in his mind when he thought of her, even if the sky here was clear. "How long?" "I do not know," I said. "Long enough to breathe without someone saying I'm difficult for inhaling." "Mom, that is not what I said." "No," I said. "It is what your wife said to her friend in my house. She called me an older woman who needs patience like a child. She said she would book a hotel next time as if a hotel was the point." He made a sound that could have been a sigh. It could have been a swallow. "I did not know she said that." "Of course you did not," I said. "She knows how to be good with you in the room. I will talk to her." "Talk to yourself first," I said. Ask whether respectful is a word you want to mean something in this house. Ask whether informing and consulting sound the same to you. I do not want you gone, he said. I do not want me gone either, I said. Yet here we are. The bus pulled away. I watched a billboard with a white horse slide past and then a field that caught the light like water, though it was only grass. I pressed the phone to my ear and listened to my son breathe. Come home, he said. I said. If two things happen. What he said quick. Kendra writes me a letter, not a message, a letter in her hand where she says what she did and how she will do differently. And you move. Not a talk, a plan and a date. You have been under my roof long enough. He did not speak for a count of 10. I could hear him stand and walk the floor under his feet, the soft echo you get in a room with plaster walls. That is a lot, he said. It is enough, I said. Call Ruth if you worry. She will tell you I am drinking coffee and not falling down. He gave a little laugh that cut in the middle. I love you, Mom. I know, I said. It is not the question. In Seattle, the air caught at the back of my throat in a way that felt like rain, even when the sky only held a thin milk of cloud. Ruth stood at the curb in a coat the color of moss. She lifted one hand and then both when she saw me. Her face changed. It did what faces do when they do not have to hold anything back. Get in here, she said and pulled me against her. I fit exactly where she meant me to fit. She smelled like laundry soap and cardamom. You took your time. I took just enough, I said. Her house sat on a small street with a hedge cut low and a mailbox with a dent from a winter when ice slid off the eave. Ivy climbed the fence and made a green seam. Inside, the air had the steady sweetness of old wood. On the table near the window, a sewing machine waited next to a neat stack of fabrics. Ruth had set a mug out and a plate with butter cookies in a tin with a picture of a place that was not here. We sat. She poured coffee. She put the cinnamon jar beside mine without asking. The spoon tinked against the cup. She waited for my words, and when they came, she did not interrupt. She let them come thick and thin in turns. She did not try to sew them together for me. She set a hand near mine and left it there the way you leave a needle in cloth holding a place. Why so long, she said when I had emptied the part that had to be emptied before anything could be filled. Because I thought if I was quiet enough, the house would be quiet, I said. Because I thought kindness could carry that much weight. Ruth tipped her head and looked at me full on. You confuse being good with being available, she said. I smiled without feeling jaunty. That sounds like something you would cross-stitch and hang where you make your toast. Do not tempt me, she said. We walked by the lake after that. The path made a ring around the water, and the water made its own ring in the sky. Ducks set small signatures on the surface. A runner passed and lifted a hand as if we were part of a club. I bought a skein of thread at a shop that smelled like cedar and glue. Ruth ran her fingers over a bolt of cotton with tiny blue doors printed in rows. We cut a square and paid by the quarter yard. In the evening, we sat at her table and pieced a block. She named it in her head, and I knew the name even if neither of us spoke it. I took a deep breath and let it out with my needle in my hand. I felt the old steadiness return to my fingers. In the space between stitches, things eased, not solved, eased. Days moved with a shape that my body recognized. Morning light on the kitchen tile. The chair by the window where birds lined up on the feeder like notes on a staff. The small walk to the corner store where a clerk called me dear and did not mean anything by it. Calls came. I let some go. I answered some. Evan came through sounding like a man who had been told a hard truth and was trying not to look away. She said it, he told me quiet. The way you said it, she said more. I know, I said. You are the one who needed to hear it from her mouth. He took a breath. I'm looking at apartments. The numbers are not friendly. Numbers rarely are, I said. Will you help, he asked, and then he corrected himself. Not with money, with what you think. What I think is that you and your wife are capable people with hands and good brains, I said. What I think is that my house is my house. He did not argue. He spoke a street name and then another. He described a place with a small balcony. He sounded like someone who had already pictured a table there. Your letter, I said. She's writing it, he said. Letters take the time they take. The mail comes when it comes. In between, Ruth and I cooked one-pot meals and ate them from bowls. I took the bus to a farmer's market where a woman sold honey and another sold eggs that were so fresh you could see the sun in the yolks. I walked in a light rain without needing a hood because the rain was not cold and I was not made of sugar. On a day when the clouds sat low enough to touch, I answered Kendra's call. Her voice did not have its gloss. "I'm sorry," she said. "For what I asked?" "For acting like your quiet meant yes," she said. "For using the word accommodating to get my way. For telling my friend you had a tantrum like a child. For telling my parents a story that made me kind and you less so." I listened. The window had a line of water that slipped and joined another and then another. And I said, "And we are looking," she said. "We saw one place that felt like a place we could be a family in without taking up all the air in someone else's lungs." And I said, "And I'm writing the letter," she said, my hand on paper. "I am writing the words without someone telling me which ones count." "Good," I said, "mail it." We hung up and I sat with Ruth and picked threads off the table and made a small pile that looked like a nest a bird could use if it was not too particular. I did not say the feeling in my chest out loud. Ruth did not press me to say it. The knock on the door came 2 days later, just after the kettle clicked off. Ruth called out as she walked down the hall. I heard the soft exchange of the mail and a hello that sounded like a neighbor who brings more than bills. She came back with a stack of envelopes and set them down like a hand of cards. There it was. My name in Kendra's careful script, the shape of the letters taller than mine. The line under the stamp straight as a ruler had made it. I ran my finger under the flap and felt the paper give. The kettle ticked in the clean quiet. The smell of steam rose and touched the air. I slipped the letter free and held it where the light from the window could touch the ink. The paper was thick and slightly toothy. My name sat at the top in Kendra's narrow hand. She had written Nora, not Mom, not Mrs. Caldwell. The ink had bled a little where she pressed too hard at the corners of letters. I began to read. The first line stumbled. The second found its breath. She wrote about Lubbock and being pregnant and scared and walking into my home with boxes that smelled like new cardboard and dust. She wrote that gratitude had turned into resentment because the house was not hers, and that she had tried to fix that by changing it until she could pretend it was. She wrote that she had taken my quiet as consent. She wrote that she had liked the word accommodating because it made her feel kind when she was being convenient. She named the small things. The soap she replaced because it did not smell like the soap she liked. The plant she moved because it looked better in light, which meant it sat where I could not see it while I drank my coffee. The shelf I lost in the kitchen when the refrigerator came. She wrote that she had told her friends I was a problem to be managed instead of the reason her daughter had a crib and a warm room. Then she named what I had asked her to name. She said she understood the difference between informing and consulting. She said she would not decide first and ask after. She said she had stopped using the word temporary as a way to push through the door. She wrote a sentence that looked like she had rewritten it 3 times to make it true. "We are applying for a place off Canyon Road, 2 bedrooms, a small balcony. We will pay our own bills. We will be a family where we fit." The last lines were plain. "If you let us try again, I will treat you like a person who owns her own door. I will ask before I cross. I am sorry for the way I made it easy to ignore you." A paper folded with the letter slid loose and fell into my lap. Crayon. June had drawn me in a garden with flowers that reached my waist. She had made my hair gray and my smile large. In the corner, she had put a small key tipped toward a little yellow door. The key had 3 teeth. The door had 1 knob. I sat with the letter open and let the sounds of Ruth's house hold me. The kettle clicked as it cooled. Somewhere a bus released its brakes with a soft animal sigh. Rain ticked once against the window and then came in a finer mist that hung without falling. Ruth stood at the counter with 2 mugs and waited. When I looked up, she brought mine and put it down. Cinnamon rose and touched the back of my throat the way a hand can touch your shoulder without taking you anywhere. "She wrote the things that matter," Ruth said. "She did," I said. My voice felt like it had been used in a new way. I called Evan. He answered so fast I could hear the click of his jaw and the soft bump as he lifted the phone too close to his ear. "She mailed it," he said. "I read it," I said. He let out a breath. "We found a place, Canyon Road. It has an old elm out front and the manager says it is quiet. The deposit is $4,500. We have $3,000. I can add more in 2 weeks. If I loan the rest," I said, "when do you move?" 2 weeks, he said. "We can sign this week and move in 2. We already have boxes." You will move in 2 weeks, I said. I will wire the money. I will come home when you are gone. He swallowed. The sound was small and full. Thank you, Mom. This is a loan, I said. I know, he said. Tell June to draw me another door, I said. The kind you opened because someone knocked. I sent the money before dinner. The bank website made a small ding that meant it had left my account. The number that remained made sense. It held steady. Numbers can do that when you are not trying to make them kind. Ruth cut apples and put them in a pan with butter and a shake of sugar. The scent climbed into the air like a song built on 3 notes. We ate with spoons quiet because the apples were warm and needed us to wait between bites. After we pieced more of the block we had started, a square with a small frame inside a larger frame, we stitched seams on the right side, then turned them, then pressed them flat with the sides of our thumbs. I booked a ticket back to Santa Fe for the day after the move. Then I changed it to the morning of. A small defiance. A small attention to what I wanted. I would arrive when the truck was in the drive and leave them with their keys when I took back mine. The days stretched and then snapped. The letter sat open on the table for a while, then returned to its envelope. The rain came and left. I went with Ruth to the market and held a wedge of cheese that smelled like a barn in a good way. I bought fabric printed with tiny doors and set it aside for a border. At night I slept hard and woke with my face at ease. 2 weeks came as if they were always going to. I flew home with a bag small enough to fit under the seat. In Albuquerque, the air felt like someone had ironed it. By the time I reached Santa Fe, the sun had sharpened to a coin at the edge of the sky. The taxi turned onto my street. The moving truck sat nose out in my drive. The ramp pulled up like a tongue resting. The door to the back stood open. Boxes labeled with thick black marker crowded the living room. Kitchen, toys, books. The word linens traveled across 3 in a row in Kendra's careful hand. June ran at me first. Her shoes slapped the tile. She hit me around the waist and squeezed until I had to put my hand on the wall to steady myself. Grandma, she said, I made you a door with flowers on it. Daddy says our new house has a balcony and I can wave like a flag. I cannot wait to see, I said, and it was true. Kendra came from the kitchen. She had no perfume on. Her hair was pulled back. She held a roll of tape at her wrist like a bracelet. She stopped at arm's length, then stepped closer. Hello, Nora, she said. Thank you for coming. Hello, Kendra, I said. Evan appeared with a box in his arms. He looked like a man who had carried more than this, and had learned to count the small mercies of a handle that does not rip. He set the box on the floor and wiped his palms on his jeans. He studied my face the way a person studies the sky to decide if rain will hold. We are almost there, he said. Good, I said. Can we talk, Kendra said, in private? We went into the living room where the couch was bare and the table showed 2 pale rings from glasses set without coasters. We sat facing each other with the door to my bedroom at my back. I could feel the key in my pocket. It had warmed to my body. I meant the letter, Kendra said. Her voice was low, not a performance, but a quiet across a small space. Every word. I do not want the kind of peace we had. Neither do I said. If I slip, she said, tell me. Do not wait until it breaks something. I will not wait, I said. And if it breaks something, I will leave. Not for a lesson, for my life. Kendra did not flinch. That is right, she said. We sat without filling the silence with anything it did not need. In the kitchen, Donna called out for tape. Evan answered. The truck engine coughed once and then settled. June sang a song to her stuffed bear in a voice too soft to keep any tune steady. Would you like to see the letter I wrote again, Kendra said. To make sure the paper is the same as the words. I do not need to, I said. I heard you. She nodded. She stood and then hesitated. May I ask you something small, she said. You may ask, I said. When we visit, she said, where should we put our bags? On the rack in the hall, I said, with a tag that says guests. She smiled. It was not the smile she used when she managed. It was the one she wore when she meant yes. Outside, the mover called a time. Evan and Ray hauled the last 2 boxes onto the ramp. Donna wiped a counter that did not need wiping, and then went to fold a towel and put it on top of a box that said, bathroom. June took my hand and placed a drawing in it. She had drawn me again with a key in my pocket. The key had a small heart on the head. She had given herself red shoes. The truck door came down with a heavy clap. The ramp slid back with a metal scrape. The clap echoed in the living room and then faded. The space felt larger. The light found corners I had not seen in a while. Avon hugged me. He smelled like sweat and tape and the last of a cologne he never remembered to buy again. He searched my face. "Are you all right here?" he said. "I'm all right here," I said. "We will see you Sunday," Kendra said. She paused, then added, "if you want us." "Ask me Friday," I said. They filed out. June waved with both arms. Evan lifted a hand. Kendra picked up the roll of tape and put it into a box that was headed for a house that was not mine. The truck engine caught. The tires made a soft crunch on the gravel. The street swallowed the noise. I stood in the door and watched them turn. Then I closed it and put my palm flat against the wood for the time it took the latch to settle. The house made a long well sound that I had not heard in months. I crossed the room and picked up the ring of keys. Metal slid against metal. I held them to the light. There was a key for the garage that no one needed but me. There was a key for the gate that June could not reach yet. There were two for the front door because one had a nick that could catch. I slid the extra front key off the ring and put it in a small bowl by the door. On a small tag I wrote guests. I hooked the tag on the key and set it alone. In the kitchen, my mug waited upside down. I lifted it and poured coffee and dusted cinnamon in a curl. The crack traced itself like an old road. I touched it with my thumb and felt the ridge. The coffee smelled like mornings before anyone else came here. I took a sip and let the warmth settle at the base of my throat. I walked down the hall and paused with my hand on my bedroom knob. The brass had warmed in the light that came through a high window. The paint shone a little where my fingers had polished it over years. I turned the key and opened the door. The air inside held cedar and the faint rose of a sachet that had outlived its flowers. The quilt lay flat as if it had not gotten up to do anything else. I set my bag on the chair. I did not unpack. When I returned to the living room, the bowl with the guest key caught a stripe of sun. Dust drifted in the light like thread. The chair by the window fit my back. The house breathed around me. The quiet was not a lack. It was a shape that held. I sat with my coffee and listened to the last of the truck sound leaving the street. Then I lifted the ring of keys and felt their weight in my palm. I slid my thumb over the notch on the one from my bedroom and let it rest there warm and smooth. Morning filled the house with its clean light. The quiet sat easily, not like a lid, more like a bowl that fit my hands. I brewed coffee and lifted my old mug. The crack caught my thumb. I set it back down and left it upside down on the counter as if it had finished its job. In the bedroom, I laid the quilt across the bed and smoothed it flat. The center square held the little door we had pieced in Seattle, a block inside a block, red thread closing the seam with small, even bites. I pressed the fabric with my palms and felt the lift and fall of the stitches. The air held cedar and the faint powder of old rose. The bowl by the front door held the guest key with its small paper tag. The loop of twine brushed the ceramic. A strip of sun warmed the metal. I opened a window and let air move through the rooms. It passed over wood and cotton and paper like a hand that knows where everything lives. That afternoon, I walked to the market. The road dust rose around my shoes and fell back without marking them. I chose a mug with a simple blue ring painted at the rim. The glaze was smooth and unbroken. At the coffee cart, the barista shook cinnamon into my cup and said it smelled like winter even when the sky said summer. On Sunday, I took the bus across town. Evan stood outside the building with a plant in his arms, a small live thing whose leaves cupped light. He smiled when he saw me, the kind that starts in the eyes and takes its time. "Second floor," he said. "The elevator works if you stand on the left side and talk to it." We rose slow. Kendra opened the door before I could knock and then stepped back and let me knock anyway. She smiled at herself and opened her hands. "Come in," she said. "Welcome." The apartment was small and made brave by color. A rug with a pattern of lines, a bowl of oranges on the table, a balcony just wide enough for 2 chairs. June came out from her room in socks that made no sound and took my hand. "I can see a dog park," she said, pulling me toward the sliding door. "The dogs have names I made up. That one is Captain." I stood at the doorway and looked out. An elm shook its heavy green. The sky cut into the building across the lot like a bright river. Inside, a pot bubbled on the stove. Kendra handed me a glass of water without asking, the way people do when they have learned something about your thirst. "Bag on the rack," she said, nodding to a small bench by the door. "If that suits you." "It suits me," I said. We ate at the small table. Kendra put the good plates out. Evan lit a candle that did not need to be lit and let it burn anyway. He told a story about a neighbor who played the trumpet at noon. Kendra asked if the fish needed more salt. June offered me a bite of her corn with the gravity of someone sharing treasure. "Thank you for coming," Kendra said, not as a phrase, but as a sentence that had been carried and then set down. "Are you comfortable?" "I am," I said. When I left, she walked me to the elevator and waited while the doors slid open. She held a small paper bag with cookies June had helped bake. She handed it to me only when I reached for it. "May we come by next week?" she asked. "We can bring dessert." "Text me the time," I said. The days found their shape. The chair by my window fit my back. I drank coffee from the new mug and washed it after every use and set it where the light could warm the ring of blue. I sewed the border for the quilt and stitched the corners down. The guest key kept its place. When I needed the house to listen, it did. Ruth came for a visit and brought a bag of apples that smelled like leaf and sun. She set her suitcase on the hallway rack without being told. We walked to the plaza and looked at jewelry laid on blankets. The stones looked like drops of sky arranged in silver. We ate under a shade tree and watched a busker teach a child a magic trick with a coin. Back home we cooked rice and beans and slept with the window open to the sound of a far train. The neighbor from 2 doors down, Mrs. Morales, leaned over my wall one morning while I was watering the basil. Her hair was a soft cloud. She smiled with her whole face. "You returned," she said. "The birds missed your seeds." "I am back," I said. She touched the basil leaves and lifted her hand to her nose. "My daughter says I am stubborn," she said. "I say I know my garden." "You do," I said, and passed her a small bundle of cuttings wrapped in damp paper. She brought me a handful of mint, and we traded the way neighbors trade with an eye for what will take root. Sometimes June came to stay the night. She arrived with a backpack and a stuffed bear, and an excitement that made her breathe faster. Kendra came to the door and waited. She looked into the house and then back at me. Her voice had the quiet that halls have. "Is tonight still good?" she asked. "It is," I said. "Your bag can sit on the rack." June and I made cookies. She shook cinnamon too quickly, and the kitchen filled with its sweet sharpness. We watched a cartoon and fell asleep against the old quilt in the living room where the air is always a little cooler. In the morning, we watered the garden, and she whispered the names of the flowers. She drew another small door on a piece of paper and tucked it under my salt jar. Going to their new place felt simple. I knocked. Kendra opened and stepped aside. Sometimes she asked if she could take my coat. Sometimes she asked where she should put my things. Evan made tea he knew I liked and added a slice of lemon. They let the rooms stay rooms, not extensions of their own rooms. On a Thursday afternoon, I stood in the hardware store turning a small wooden tag on its twine. The letters pressed into it read, "Guests." I took it home and hung it on the hook above the bowl by the door. The key touched the wood and made a small sound that only a person standing very close would hear. I finished the quilt on a day that smelled like rain without rain. The last seam closed smoothly. I spread the quilt in the square with the door sat where it belonged. I did not think about what it meant. I liked the look of it. I liked how the red thread carried the eye to the corner and then back. Evan came by to help with the lamp. He knocked and waited. He looked taller in the doorway. He worked in the bedroom with the patience of a person who has learned from stripped screws. He finished and tested the switch and let the light fill the wall. On his way out, he stopped by the guest bowl. "Should I have my copy of the key on the rack?" he asked, not touching it. "You should ring the bell," I said. "I will bring the key." He nodded. He looked at the door, and then at me, and then at the bowl, and smiled as if a joke had landed softly inside him. Sunday afternoon they came for lunch. I cooked a pot of stew and set the table with the quilted placemats. I put the new mug in its place and used another for company. The doorbell chimed. Kendra stood with a cake box. Evan carried a bag of lemons for water. June held a drawing face down against her chest. "Come in," I said. Kendra's eyes moved to the hall and then back. She did not look past the line where the carpet changed. She stood in the kitchen and asked where the plates lived. She set the cake on a stand and took off the lid and set it aside and did not leave it on the counter. We ate until the bowls held only the shine of sauce. June climbed into my lap and showed me the drawing. It was my garden with a path and a gate. The gate had a latch. The latch had a small smile. She had drawn herself standing outside the gate with her hand raised. "I am knocking," she said. "I hear you," I said. When they left, I walked them to the door. The afternoon had softened. The porch smelled like warm wood. Evan hugged me. Kendra kissed my cheek. June reached up with open arms, and I lifted her and set her down on the top step so she could jump to the sidewalk. She landed and laughed at her own feet. I closed the door and leaned my palm against it until the latch settled. The house gathered itself. I washed the dishes and set them in a row that pleased me. I dried the counter where a ring of water had formed and left the cloth to air over the back of a chair. I carried my coffee to the front room and sat in the chair that sees the yard. The blue ring on the mug looked like a promise without words. Dust turned in the stripe of sun like thread teased from a spool. I lifted the ring of keys and let them ride the length of my fingers. The metal had learned my warmth. The sound they made was small and exact. I stood, walked to the hall, and closed my bedroom door. The key turned and settled with the clean click I had always liked. In the other room, the guest key rested where it belonged. I opened the front window and let air lift the edge of the curtain. The world outside went on. The quiet held. The house breathed. I sat back down and read where I had left the ribbon, and the page turned with the weight of paper that had been waiting only for me. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.